Welcome back, everyone. Good morning and welcome to the first panel of the third annual virtual Sinclair Method conference, Redefining Recovery. I'm Jenny Williamson, Executive Director at the C3 Foundation, and I'm so glad that you guys have joined us. This conference is available to view and to participate in for free, thanks to our two co-headline sponsors, RIA Health and Work It Health, and our generous anonymous sponsor who subsidized our Hero Recurring Donation Program as today's panel sponsor. If you'd like to support the work of the C3 Foundation, there's a donation link in our profile, and we have a timer that will also drop a donation link into the chat during the broadcast. If you're on Twitter, please feel free to live tweet our conference with the hashtags Redefining Recovery and Options Save Lives. It's a great way to amplify the impact and reach of our conference. So our first panel is a conversation with Taylor Van Buskirk about the use of the Sinclair Method in a residential treatment setting, which is something that we have been asked about so many times over the years. Taylor Van Buskirk is currently working as a clinical director for Deerhaven Gardens, which is a new residential women's alcohol treatment program located in Asheville, North Carolina. Taylor's educational background includes receiving his MS in substance abuse and clinical counseling from East Carolina University in 2016 and his BS in psychology from Fayetteville State University in 2014. Taylor is dually licensed in both the behavioral health and addiction fields as an LCMHC and LCAS, and I'll let him explain what that means in a few moments. Taylor is also nationally certified as an NCC and licensed to supervise substance abuse professionals as a CCS. While board certified, Taylor Van Buskirk has practiced counseling professionally for 6 years and has experience working in collegiate, mobile, inpatient, detox, residential, judicial, social services, outpatient, and aftercare settings. He believes strongly in a holistic approach to counseling and utilizes an eclectic counseling approach, relying heavily on Rogerian person-centered theory, cognitive behavioral therapy, motivational interviewing, and some psychodynamic interventions. That was a mouthful. Taylor, welcome to the conference.
It's a pleasure. Nice to be with you. This is very exciting to be part of this third annual conference with C3. It's been a long time coming for Deerhaven, but we've been hand in hand with C3 since the beginning. So it's very, very, very happy to be here.
And so I guess we'll start with, why don't you explain a little bit more about your qualifications now that I have spewed the alphabet soup to get us started?
Yeah, you stole the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say in grad school, they always said, we're going to give you the tools to get these alphabets behind, soup behind your name. And so in North Carolina, board certified as an LCAS, which is a licensed clinical addiction specialist. And also that's the addiction piece. And then the behavioral health, mental health specifically, is the LCMHC, which is a licensed clinical mental health counselor, which formerly known as the LPC. But North Carolina did a little shift there and wanted to give us a couple more letters to put behind our name. Nothing different, just the name of it changed. There's also the NCC, which is the National Counseling Certification. And then also the Addiction Board in North Carolina also provides a certified clinical supervisor credential. So I'm able to provide board certification supervision to the addiction professionals in North Carolina.
All right. Wow. So that's so basically all that comes down to, you've had a lot of experience, a lot of training, and you've brought that all to Deerhaven to work in and help set up what I believe may be the world's only inpatient residential facility that uses the Sinclair Method. So why don't you start a little bit with some background about why TSM in a residential setting, and how did that whole thought process come about with Deerhaven?
That is a good lead in, because man, there's a lot to talk about. I think the timeline where Deerhaven came from is so important to understand, because it really, what helped us understand where we were going with the program is wanting to make an impact and really in the space of addiction and behavioral health, by helping the most amount of people. And, as you kind of read off my background, it just reminded me kind of in a nostalgic way of all of the different programs and level of care experience that I have, all coming from the abstinence-based model of addiction. Um, Up until the point I came onto this program about 2 years ago, Deerhaven Gardens program, we were going to be an abstinence-based model program. I mean, that's what the space offered. But the owners had a grand vision of like, let's really make an impact. And so we were looking at alternative models of addiction treatment. And it really actually, it's a funny story. It came down to just picking up a Time magazine that actually focused on TSM. And the owners were very interested, like alcohol, you can actually consume alcohol and reduce your drinking in the process. Have you ever heard about this method? And I feel like a lot of professionals, especially a lot of interviews for our program, have this same story. I got the best training. I was in the field for years in multiple different levels of care, and I never heard about a targeted naltrexone regimen for treatment. I knew about naltrexone. I knew about taking that on label prescribing every day, or Vivitrol extended release, but never in a targeted fashion. And so that conversation started to get deeper into, is this possible? Can we do this in a residential setting? It was determined through deep diving and research online and through just consulting across the US that this is primarily an outpatient modality, but there's a lot of clinical evidence that obviously shows that this works. And let's give it a shot. Let's start looking at the zoning, the licensing, and the process to do that. And it led us to where we're at today. It was a very humbling process, and working with the state, DHHS, and working with those state representatives to get the program licensed. But ultimately, it led us to getting the program, the U.S., at least I'm certain, at least in the U.S., the U.S.'s first residential TSM program. I'm not sure about worldwide. I'd like to tout that, but I have read in a little bit that there might be a program out there, maybe in Finland or in the Europe, that might be utilizing TSM. Just scratching the surface on some research, I think there might be something out there, but I know in the U.S. that I've not found a program level of care for TSM anywhere in the U.S. as of right now.
And this has been quite a journey. I mean, I remember you weren't even on our radar yet when we did our first conference was in 2020, pretty much at the very beginning of the pandemic, and out of nowhere, you popped up as a sponsor for our conference, and we're like, okay, who are you? We've never heard of you. Are you guys using this? And so it has taken you more than 2 full years to get your doors open and licensing and ready. That tells me 2 things. One, that you guys have a lot of perseverance, but also that there were a lot of hurdles along the way. Can you talk about those obstacles that kept popping up that took you guys from back in 2020 saying, yeah, this is what we want to do and we know we want to do it, through all of those steps to actually being able to get patients on site and help them?
Yeah, there were a lot of barriers that we did take head on and overcome. I think the first barrier that was is this something that is it isn't snake oil? Is this actually a method that works? And getting through that, we acquired as much as possible. Probably we have the most comprehensive clinical library of studies and reviews and papers and books on the topic of TSM, for good reason. We want to make sure that we're helping people. So when we were very confident that this is something that we know for certain, that it's evidence-based, that it's scientific, that the approach helps 78% of those that adhere to the method, we were sold from the gates at that point. We just went right through it. And, doing the search on what's out there for people that are competent, that understand the method, because myself, obviously coming from an abstinence-based background, not understanding TSM from an experience standpoint or practice standpoint, but definitely on paper at that point, the first thing that popped up was the C3 Foundation, and we're like, wow, this, from what we saw, this was the most comprehensive outreach or advocacy for this for the method that's on the internet. And so we reached out and we started that conversation with you and Claudia. And it has been a 2-year process, but that really, I think, is where it started with getting the best minds in TSM together. The next hurdle was, how do we create a program? One, we built this whole program policy and procedure that's defined on an abstinence-based model. We have 2 facilities. One's the lodge and one's the villa. We're going to do social detox and supervised living. We come to the program, you detox, and then you come over to the other part of the program. And when we decided to change the whole model, there was no blueprint to go off of. There was no residential program that said, hey, no, we don't prohibit alcohol. We take everything away from you and build you back up. That's the model that's out there. So we didn't have anything to go off of. So I guess the best route for us to take at that time that we decided is, let's get the best minds in TSM together. And Claudia was a huge piece of that. I know we consulted with Dr. Umhal a bit. Dr. Nelson, who's an NMD out in Arizona. We got together and we met for a few weeks intensively, 2-hour long groups, meetings that we had online, and just really put it all on paper. What would the program look like? What is TSM? How can we best, why do we need a residential level of care? What could we do better? What can we offer? And so the catalyst for our proprietary customized TSM curriculum here at Deerhaven really was founded in the best minds that we could find in TSM. And so I was so happy to be part of that. It was an amazing experience. And I think what was born out of that was our program guidelines and structure that we offer to the clients now in a 28-day structured program. Other barriers that we came, besides the fact of actually developing the curriculum and developing the policies and procedures and the protocols, was licensing. Each state's different when it comes to licensing. North Carolina, very straightforward process. But what we're offering as far as a product as a service to clients needs to be labeled evidence-based. And so when we went to the state and said, hey, we're making a few changes to the program, they're, well, that's interesting. What kind of changes are you making? Well, do you have your seatbelt on, strapped in? This is called the Sinclair Method. And of course, again, same story over and over. Never heard of the Sinclair Method. And they have extremely bright, intelligent, experienced professionals over there that are running the 3 branches of DHHS. And so what they said is, hey, what we're going to need is a little bit more information. And so since we gathered that clinical library of TSM material that stems all the way back to the 60s, we did write with the assistance of a research assistant, basically a very comprehensive program synopsis and then a meta-analysis of research. So we picked out where the 78% comes from. Where did this method start? What is naltrexone on label versus targeted, and what are the success rates comparatively? And so we provided that. It was a very long process, and I think they sat on that for 4 months. They had a debate, they had panels on it, and when all was said and done, they smacked an evidence-based practice label on it. And now in North Carolina, TSM is an evidence-based practice, and we were able to move forward with licensing as normal. But that was one of the largest hurdles that we were able to overcome. And I mean, it's coming from North Carolina. I'm proud to say that we're able to say, hey, I don't know about the other states, but I know that North Carolina, it is an evidence-based practice by DHHS in North Carolina. So the rest of the process was kind of systematic and linear at that point. Safety at the facility and submitting the program guidelines. But that was kind of the last hurdle, is getting the state officials to say, hey, this is evidence-based. And really what helped, I think, bridge the understanding of what TSM was, which was kind of a thread and theme through that program synopsis and meta-analysis of research, was harm reduction. As you know, there's a piece to that, and then also medication assisted therapy with opiate use. So it's we're prescribing something that is similar to what they're using, but it's helping. And so with those two combinations, with the description of TSM, they were able to say, hey, this makes sense, and we're going to approve this.
But it's always such a more difficult process when you're doing something for the very first time. But that also had to have been very enthralling and thrilling for you when you what was your initial reaction when you finally got word that, all right, we accept your business model, your treatment planning, the Sinclair method as evidence-based, and we're going to approve your license to be able to open. Talk about how that must have felt.
I know, me being the point of contact, always getting the first word, I would shoot that information, hitting the next benchmark with the program to the owners, and we're so passionate about what we do. I mean, there was laughter, there was some tears every step of the way, and then it was regain your composure because we've got more things to do. This is get ready for the next thing. But I think just being part of something that is brand new, that in your spirit and soul that you're making such an impact for the better. When honestly my experience has come from such a, as professionals, we give so much of ourselves, and oftentimes we see that it does not work, and it's almost finds like it's hinged and contingent on how much effort the professional gives to the individual and the client working hard alongside. But sometimes we feel like we have to do more and more, and oftentimes it doesn't pan out the way we want, and it's real. Burnout is real, and being able to ride this wave, to be part of such it's like a catalyst for change in this space, it's really been rewarding. And I think it's been shared as part of the program and the company as a whole, all the way up to ownership.
And one of the first biggest misconceptions that we always have to squash about the Sinclair method is the Sinclair method is more than simply taking a pill, waiting an hour, and drinking. So talk about how the Sinclair method in a residential setting is working, and all of the other pieces of the puzzle that you encourage clients to bring together so that they walk out feeling confident and that this is going to work long term for them.
Absolutely. So and that's why we focused on a holistic approach to treatment. Looking at the whole person, mind, body, and spirit. We've got the various aspects of the program that address each of those. And as a startup and a program that is brand new, finding our footing in the space just as a program and what we're offering as a program. And so our program has taken a shift into skill building and tool acquisition. We are a 28-day program that one can extend their stay if therapeutically recommended. However, in those 28 days, we really are honing in on giving you a blueprint, an individualized blueprint for something that is specific to you that you can take home with you. We do focus on some process, which is extremely important. However, we tie that into the skill building and tool acquisition. Part of the TSM curriculum, we've got two program tracks. We have the TSM track, which has the you get 12 extended groups over the 4-week period that's specific to TSM and recovery. So we take what works, obviously, there's a lot of good information that comes from abstinence. We just kind of cut out all of that abstinence-based elements, and we apply what works to our TSM curriculum. So that's the one program track, and then we're building and defining our biofeedback track that has a biosound therapy aspect to it. and it works on self-regulation and dropping into coherence with heart rate variability. So those paired together kind of make the Deerhaven model of treatment. And we're finding how powerful they are together. I mean, I think the perspective of biofeedback and TSM, they really resonate well together because they're self-driving. One, it's saying, hey, I can take control over things that people have said I can't take control of, the mind-body connection, right? I can override my parasympathetic nervous system when I'm triggered. And, instead of the lifelong debilitating, I have no control view of addiction, I can take this medication and apply the recovery tools and regain control. And so I think they really complement one another, and it's extremely powerful. So when the individual comes out of Deerhaven, they have all of those really core recovery skills necessary, the cognitive skills, the journaling skills, that which is a huge part of TSM. Just for those listening, if you're not journaling, if you're not taking down exactly what you're drinking on a daily basis, you start today, because being able to see not only by somebody giving you feedback that, hey, you're doing well, writing it down and seeing it on paper is believing it. I mean, a lot of clients there they hyper focus on the here and the now, but if you blow that back and say, hey, look, had a heavy drinking day, but look where you've come from. I mean, that is the motivational catalyst to just continue on the pathway to TSM. So journaling is so important. So we go into a variety of ways of doing that with both program tracks, the TSM track and the biofeedback track, because writing things down, remembering them, and then being able to reference them is an extremely important part and tool to bring with you as you leave the program. So, the blueprint for each individual leaving Deerhaven is unique and different, but we like to offer a plethora of skills and tools that they can choose from while they're here. Part of that is our wellness program. The dual treatment aspect of TSM, where you're having the sensitivity to dopamine when you're not taking the naltrexone is super important. And so we do have a fitness track and wellness program that allows you to stimulate that natural endorphin release to heal and to create your own dopamine again when it's not being affected by the naltrexone on those drinking days. And so the wellness and the clinical track are the two ways that we approach that holistic treatment at Deerhaven.
That is so amazing. One of the things that I love most about the entire concept of the Sinclair Method is how, while it is very narrow at its core of medication plus a wait time plus alcohol to kill that alcohol equal reward signal, it is so easily adaptable to work alongside these other treatment methods that may be more traditional. Can you, before we go into the core of how the TSM piece of it works at Deerhaven, can you talk a little bit more about the skill building? Like, what are some of the skills that frequently people need some additional help with when they first come into the program?
First and foremost, it is a medication assisted therapy, right? So the medication adherence piece is huge. So the compliance piece, where avoiding the pitfalls, always having your medication available, kind of the tips and the tricks so that you can continually take your medication in high risk situations. And so there's kind of a new, for someone that TSM is a nuanced approach for, and they're applying that to their lifestyle. There's some early recovery skills that can be applied. So if you're going out into a high risk area, you're taking your medication no matter what. Whereas you grow in your seasons as a TSMer, you can apply that differently and maybe have the medication with you and not take it necessarily all the time. But there's phases one can grow as they become more experienced in TSM. So we're kind of getting that foundation on what works, and obviously meeting the individual with where they're at in recovery. We've had we could admit in different clients in different stages of phases of where they're at in TSM recovery. Some that have never tried TSM before and they're inducing on the medication at the program. And then there's also, individuals that have been on TSM for a while. And so they're looking to enhance and sharpen their skills or acquire things that they've not learned before. So we like to build that foundational, that approach, that foundation for TSM. So they're avoiding the pitfalls and being successful up front. The journaling piece and understanding the alcohol, that the relationship with alcohol is huge. And I think both in abstinence and TSM space, it's extremely important to understand what your relationship is with alcohol. It's often conversations about relationships and recovery tend to go with, our family and our friends. There's a huge, there's a relationship with that bottle that we need to talk about. And we definitely do that, especially with the one-on-one therapy at Deerhaven, but also in a group capacity. There's a huge, I think, benefit to a residential piece that I've obviously noticed in my past experience in treatment, but definitely here at Deerhaven, since TSM, the TSM community is more virtual rather than kind of brick and mortar. I mean, you can go anywhere in any city and find a group or NA group at any time. Type in TSM groups, probably not going to be able to find a group anywhere. So if you're traveling, it's very limited. But the ladies coming to Deerhaven, they connect well. It's like they feel like they are part of something, in which they are, but it really makes it concrete and reality for them, is that there are individuals that are doing this and they get that face-to-face connection, which is huge. And so they really connect into the community at Deerhaven, which, as an alumni, they continue to obviously work on that relationship moving forward on a recovery sense, but also we're connecting them to Option Stabilize and C3, and they're able to get into the different forums online that maybe they didn't know existed, or individuals at the program are already connected with. So there's a huge community piece that I think that is a huge benefit to coming to Deerhaven, which we tap them into. The aftercare piece is such a huge part of recovery, and we're especially when it's limited to online and virtual. So how we can best set someone up for success by defining what kind of support they get in the aftercare, whether that be with a local peer support or therapist who understands TSM, or even a provider. Then online support is, and also alumni care. That's also a piece that they're getting here at the program as well when they leave.
And so now let's talk about the nuts and bolts of TSM in a residential setting, because as you touched on earlier, and as we all know, a traditional residential model, there are no substances allowed whatsoever.
The
And
elephant
so
in
the
the room,
very
right?
thought of being able to take the medication and drink alcohol is completely foreign in this concept, and you're the first ones doing it. So why don't you talk us through what that actually looks like?
Yeah, the elephant in the room, right? The alcohol, right? How are you incorporating alcohol at the program? So that I love to talk about this, because that is really, I think, what sets us apart, obviously, with TSM. I mean, the piece is you take your medication and then you drink. Each step is a closer to extinction. How do you do that in a residential setting with alcohol? You know, we don't prohibit alcohol. So our guideline is that, hey, we don't prohibit it. We don't, our program, it's around it. Everything is definitely, it's this wraparound support. But with the main headline the alcohol, is that we don't prohibit it. We don't sell it. We don't generate any revenue from it. If an individual chooses to purchase alcohol, we can do that for them. We manage it from time that it arrives at the program. We inspect it, we log it, we label it. We are using some interesting enough, we're using some applications for our EMR that aren't traditionally meant to do that. We actually log it as a medication, and then we actually administer it like a medication. So it logs it, so you can track every single drink that's been administered. So we are pouring the alcohol, we are measuring it. There's a huge psychoed piece about what your percentage is and how much you're drinking, and how many ounces, if you're drinking liquor versus wine versus beer, how many actual drinks that equates to. So we do a calculation there. So on their log, they're actually getting the exact units there instead of just 14% one versus the 12% one. There's a difference there, especially in a day, right? You've actually drank maybe 2 or 3 more than you would thought you have if you didn't understand that. So we're teaching the clients about the alcohol that they're consuming. But we do keep it under lock and key. But there is the golden rule at Deerhaven is that, to gain access to the alcohol that you purchase, which we don't prohibit, they do need to take their naltrexone. So we do assist with they just request the naltrexone. We go ahead and administer that. We are taking breathalyzers, and we actually issue breathalyzers to the clients, which in itself, they're logging that information. I think there's some great insight one can gain about where they're at emotionally, what they're thinking, how they're feeling at different levels of BAC, which that they've never even noticed before. So when, for instance, there was some great insight around a client that, from 0.06 to 0.09 was kind of the window where they would feel or start thinking a certain way. So they realized that, hey, if I could stay under this amount and manage that or just kind of monitor that I never got into that thinking pattern that caused me these issues. And so there's a breathalyzer piece that we're logging. We're doing that in our EMR, but then the client's also doing it on their side of things too. So they're issued a kind of a handheld breathalyzer that they can do at any time. But yeah, it's very precise in the sense that we're measuring exact amounts. There is a fun piece that we've added to Deerhaven too, which, yes, we have alcohol, but we always we're not encouraging drinking, TSM is not an excuse to drink. And we always have an alternative to drinking. And so there's not necessarily like a happy hour, but if there is someone drinking, we make different amenities, different activities available at any time. Our staff are always available 24/7 to talk through what's going on or to offer an activity or something to do at the facility other than drinking. We do have a bar. I thought that might come up. We do actually have a dedicated serving area, but it's decorated and adorned with mocktails, non-alcoholic beverages. So you can come down to that bar and you can order any type of non-alcoholic drink that you wish, all the way from non-alcoholic Tom Collins to anything, whatever that is, we can make it. And we have a brand of non-alcoholic spirits that we use. And so, we kind of teach maybe if somebody staggers their drinking, to implement that tool, maybe drink a mocktail in between beverages. Or, we even had events at the facility where we had mocktail events. Nobody even drank alcohol. We just did a mocktail event. And so they also are able to leave with which mocktails they like, and the recipes for that, so they can bring that part of that aspect home with them as far as their blueprint for recovery and tools that work. So I hope that answers your question with alcohol, but they are able to consume alcohol, and we do monitor it, and we do kind of take a hospitality standard to cutoffs. We expect we have a high expectation and standard for behavior at the facility, and so there are rules about in any behavioral health organization. There are things that we need to address therapeutically, and they are pretty much well outlined as to if this and then that. But if those don't present themselves at the facility, we just adhere to the standard guidelines.
So from listening to you talk about logging both the medication and the alcohol dispensing, mm-hmm. It almost sounds, and correct me if I'm wrong, almost like quantitative mindfulness, if you'd like to call it that, because it sounds. And was the mindfulness piece of that something that was was that the intent of it, or is that the side effect of being able to learn a bit of mindfulness while learning about the actual quantities and units and trackable metrics?
I think being very precise is, I think it's kind of stems from my approach. I really like to provide psychoed and see things down on paper. And I like to work with clients to see, hey, you can hear it from me and I can motivate you and you can say it out loud, but to see that too, I think is really powerful. And so we wanted to make sure that we were capturing that in some light, and then also having the client capture that and learn that skill if they hadn't already, and apply that moving forward, since it's such an important piece of TSM. I mean, I'm glad you brought up mindfulness, because in between, I guess, in between the two tracks, we've got TSM and we've got the biofeedback. In between, we're teaching the community resiliency model. We go over because it really ties in obviously to the biofeedback, the parasympathetic, sympathetic nervous system, self-regulation, triggers, bouncing out and getting yourself back into your resiliency zone. And then obviously the self-regulation to drop into coherence, which is kind of almost the same as describing getting back into your resiliency zone. We do teach that, and obviously that all starts with one, building your awareness, and then being mindful throughout your day. It is Deerhaven Gardens, so we have a beautiful 5 acres of manicured gardens and pathway, hiking trails, and that mindfulness piece is really, I think, clients are able to apply that, throughout the grounds, throughout the gardens, and really hone in on the DBT skills and the mindfulness aspect of just the environment here at the program. So that the mindfulness piece kind of just naturally occurred, and then was definitely heightened by and showcased by the CRM aspect of the program. And then as it was applied to, I think, the logging, I think it just naturally kind of progressed into that, being very specific and very exact about your recovery.
So the next question I want to ask, over the last 9 years, I have seen so many people who they will start with using the Sinclair method at home, and so they think they've got everything 100% under control because they haven't put themselves into the social situations. And so there's a fear around the social drinking aspect, because people are afraid that everything they've done is all going to fall apart and they're going to start back at day one, which of course there is no starting over from day one unless you completely quit following the medication protocol. But can you talk a little bit, as you're able to, about the effect of how these non-alcoholic happy hours and events that you guys are putting on, how are those being received by people, from a standpoint of, are they feeling not just building confidence, but is there a sense of relief that they're getting to try these social situations from a non-drinking standpoint and being able to do that in a safe environment? Can you talk a little bit, as you can, about the reactions that you're seeing from the clients?
Absolutely. So we start with the experiential aspect, right? It's non-alcoholic, it's in a controlled environment. So we have experiential aspects of that particular therapy. And then I'll get into the exposure therapy, where we actually go out into the community and they can choose to consume alcohol, and we call those therapeutic dinners. But to start out with what we're doing at the facility, there's a stigma that obviously is, I think, well, not to mention alcohol is just ingrained in society. So, I mean, life should be fun and adventurous. And, since alcohol is just really a strong thread throughout wherever you go, it's like there's always alcohol. It's really hard to separate oneself. And so, if you're looking at separating yourself from alcohol, you really feel like you have to stay away from that. So you get this sense, I can't enjoy social activities. And so with the mocktails, it's that experiential therapy piece of the program allows one to be in that situation socially, to understand, hey, listen to myself. How am I thinking? Is there anxiety? Is there an issue going on with my social involvement that is associated to my relationship with alcohol? And so we can tie that into their treatment plan as far as goals. So we start by discovering what they're feeling, what they're hearing from themselves, what would they like to do short term and long term, apply that to their treatment plan, and then incorporate some interventions like exposure therapy. So the next step is to actually go out to a private dinner. In fact, we do a preparatory kind of group about what's the goals, what have you learned from the experiential piece by doing the mocktail events at the program. They take the naltrexone together as a community, kind of like-minded. Everybody's there to support them. We go with staff and we go to a private dinner in downtown Asheville, where we're located. And it may be a variety of restaurants, but nonetheless, it's private. We have a reservation. We're there to, I'm there, or direct support staff are there, and they're supporting them through this. That we're available for somebody if they want to leave, they can leave, and we have the transportation there. But as far as what the clients have experienced is that that there's no over imbibing. There's such a huge energy with the cohort that it strengthens them. And from what I've seen, they've done extremely well in meeting their goals and have found that to be extremely beneficial, because then we go back to the facility, transport them, and then we have a debrief, a process group on the experience. And so we do that over the course of 3 weeks at the program, including some lunches. So we do the events at the facility, mocktails, and now we can always incorporate the mocktails, but we do have scheduled events that help kind of define the progression of one's treatment at the program. So we start out here, we're going to be here, and in between, these are how we're going to get there. So that's how I guess we incorporate that. And the kind of the feedback that we've gotten from the clients is that they've never gotten that anywhere else. The closest I could think from like an abstinence-based model is that you could get a peer support in the community that's in recovery, but your peer support isn't going to sit there and drink with you. And so I think we're doing something quite unique here at the program. So if you coming to Deerhaven, one can expect, yes, you're going to get that social piece, and we're going to support you through it. And we're going to, fine tune what you're looking for, short-term and long-term, and you're going to have the support along the way to work through all of that.
So this year's theme is redefining recovery. And what you guys are doing at Deerhaven is you're redefining recovery by redefining treatment. So we've got about 2 minutes left.
Okay.
What's your vision of the future for TSM, residential treatment, and Deerhaven?
Okay. Well, I only have 2 minutes. I will say big picture, just personally, and I'll get into Deerhaven, is that my journey with discovering and applying this method to clients and understanding the method at a much deeper, granular level is that I think we can do more. I think this should be a preventative treatment. I think it really there's anecdotal evidence to suggest that if you have tendencies as a genetic predisposition to alcoholism, or you're seeing trends, or you have family members that are struggling with it, and you can take this medication the moment you ever drink alcohol and maybe never even develop an AUD. So I think there's some anecdotal evidence to suggest that, hey, that would work as a preventative. I'm not sure in the political realm and the FDA and all that how that would play out, but I'd like, I see in the future that if we could apply this as a preventative, we could probably attack AUD head on in this country. And as a program, obviously wanting to help others and more get this method out to more people, and understanding, I think that the success rates of someone that enters a residential program versus outpatient, or at least has the opportunity to do residential and step down to outpatient first, those success rates are going to go through the roof, since we're really applying these skills and tools in a much more concentrated, supportive environment. So we'd hope to extend our program, to various areas and get them the blueprint for residential care out there, so we can help as many people as possible, because that's ultimately the goal.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for helping us kick off today's panels, Taylor. I am looking forward to continuing to work with Deerhaven and watching you grow as we continue to grow. So thank you for being here. And
thank you, Jenny. I appreciate it.
And we will go ahead and move into our intermission now. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
We'll be back here at 11 o'clock.